all and the horizon fell away, then you would see sky and you would have to look down to see Earth. And Earth would fall away from you and you wouldn't see it anymore. 8 inches per mile, that's a lot of curvature. It could fall away from you in a short distance, 8 inches per mile squared from a focal point. So when you're way the hell up there, you and then you got clouds and atmosphere and things like this that you just can't see through. Your eyes, you're not Superman. You know, your eyes are incredibly designed and prove that you're not evolved from anything. And actually, the trilobite has one of the most complicated eyes ever found. And it's an index file from way back. So it would have had, our eye would have had to get worse with time, not better. So again, it just shows de-evolution. Nothing is evolving, nothing's getting better. And then we found trilobites that were fossilized in footprints and stuff like this, and they try to say stupid things like maybe there was a trilobite that was the shape of a human foot. That was one of the conclusions that a scientist actually came out with. Probably got a promotion. To be quite honest, he's probably in textbooks and stuff. That's the science that you guys are indoctrinated with. It's not real. It's all bullshit. And then that Eric Dubai or whatever, he seems to be putting up a straw man argument that you can smash down. Again, I debate him just as easily as I would debate anybody heliocentric. Because it frustrates me that they say there was no dinosaurs, no dragons, and all that stuff. Behemoth's right in the Bible. It's described quite clearly as having a tail like a cedar and big bones and all this stuff. Long neck. It's not a giraffe. It's not a rhinoceros. It's not an elephant. Right? It's a brontosaurus. The long neck and then there's a lot of stories still to this day of brontosaurus type creatures living in the Amazon River. And that if you come to a spot on the Amazon River and there's no hippos and there's no alligators or no crocodiles or whatever, and you don't see any real predators around for a while, then that means you're in his territory. You better be careful because you could get eaten just as quick as the crocodile or the hippo. They're territorial. But there's people, Amazon tribes people that'll tell you stories of, being bit by them and being attacked by them, having their boats attacked by them, getting away, just, or people being disappeared by them. And, they know the attack style through the investigation over the years. And when somebody disappears in that fashion, they can easily figure out that it wasn't a hippo or an alligator. Because a hippo, big bites out of your boat, and an alligator pulls you out of your boat, where this guy destroys and smashes it up and tears you out. Apparently. I don't really know all the investigative things that they do. I'm just guessing on that, sorry. So, but they have an investigation style they assume is true. And I have no reason to disbelieve them, I guess, is my point on that. And they're not the only tribes who describe things like that. There's a Loch Ness Monster, and there's a Loch Ness Monster in one of the Great Lakes here in Canada as well. And so, and sea monsters were described all throughout history. Now, there's a guy whose job on a ship back in the day was to write things down for the king. And if he falsified his legends, the legend book or his diaries or whatever for the king, and it was found to be false at all, he had his head cut off. So they weren't lying in these books. And they were writing about sea monsters, and they were writing about discovering giants when they got here and to the Americas amongst the Indians and stuff like this. And and all kinds of different so-called mythological creatures. These guys wouldn't have lied. They couldn't have lied. If they would have lied and gotten on a boat with 100 people or whatever, chances are, if anybody's story's different than the story that you reported, and then it's proven that you're the one, no. These guys weren't lying. Get their heads cut right off. Or worse, tortured for God knows the kind of things that would have happened in those brutal times, right? And your science talks about cavemen having the big eyebrow ridge. Otherwise, the skeletons are mostly the same. Well, a 300-year-old, 400-year-old, whatever, would have a huge caveman-like eyebrow ridge. Same as the elongated skulls. If you had really long hair, after time, your skull elongates, apparently. So if you were like, obviously it wouldn't be noticeable in 100 years, wouldn't be noticeable in 200 years. But if you were 400 years old, 600, 800, 900, that would be quite noticeable. So your cavemen weren't cavemen, they were that. And then the writings on the cave walls and the actual evidence that men lived in caves, well, men still live in caves, number one. You know, in the deserts there, you know, in the, what's his name there? The fake terrorists that we just fought. All those guys, all the 9/11 guys that we fought, they all live in caves. But when Noah and his family got off of the boat, and all the animals, the prey animals would have moved out fairly quick and started to have babies and try to get away from the predator animals, right? And then you'd have like easy prey like bunny rabbits and things like that that would have bred right away and been kind of everywhere. A lot of the animals coming off of Noah's Ark had been vegetarian their whole lives. This was their first time being predators, and they probably still would have eaten a lot of vegetation, or some at least. Still had some of that knowledge, enough so that the prey animals could have had a chance to prosper. And then it stands to reason the things that stay alive in Australia or the Galapagos Islands and stuff like this made it to there, and then the water levels rose up, cutting off access to them from predators. The predators wouldn't have had to have moved as far. They could have stuck with the slower animals and fed themselves, and they would spread out at a slower rate than the prey animals. It would spread out at a fast rate. And things like kangaroo wouldn't stand a chance anywhere else on Earth with big cats and stuff around, so they would have gotten wiped right out. But when the Grand Canyon opened up, it would have protected them on Australia and in the Galapagos and places like this. You don't have to take a lot of water out of the oceans to make it able to walk everywhere on Earth. That's how the 10 tribes, the lost 10 tribes of Israel, would have walked to North America and became Native Americans and Mexicans the same way. And then, like I said, all it takes is something like Grand Canyon to open up. There's evidence of 2 lake shorelines that Grand Canyon would have held in that would have been the size of 3 states. I forget which 3 states it is, but there was 3 entire states that were under a lake, and they found the shorelines of these 2 lakes, massive lakes. And obviously modern science says that they're millions of years old, billions of years, but that's bullshit. And we can easily prove that, because rivers flow into the Grand Canyon at greater than 90-degree angles, and then turn to flow out. And if they were cut in over a slow period of time, all the rivers would be at acute angles, running into making even flow. They wouldn't, and in order for the Colorado River to cut the Grand Canyon, it's impossible, because the Grand Canyon is higher than the Colorado River or whatever. So it held in these lakes. The dam opened up. Oh, and there's an absence of a delta, which is the remnants of the sediment dropped off at the mouth of the river by a slow erosion process. Whereas when you have a dam, which is a quick erosion process, you don't have a delta. It's washed straight out to sea. Grand Canyon's young, cut fast. Probably, well, it was probably cut in a day too, and then emptied out down to over a couple of weeks or whatever. It would have taken a little while to empty that much water, but I used to build dams and things just for fun as a kid, and let them fill up, and then just as they'd broke over in one spot, they would immediately drill a big hole in that, all the way to the base of the dam, and she'd drain out through that spot. That's what happened to the Grand Canyon. It's just, eventually the water got just that much higher. Maybe the Hebrews all went for a swim at the same time in one of those lakes, and it was just enough to push it over the edge and cut her open. Dinosaur had a poop in there. Who knows? So anyway, moral of the story: most of the stuff you guys think is science is not. 45 minutes.